This is the All Rev'd Up podcast, and I'm Reverend Emmett Price.
And I'm Reverend Irene Monroe.
Irene, episode 2 of season 3. We are vaccinated and here to stay.
Amen. We are vaccinated indeed. Neither of us woke up dead.
Amen.
All right.
That's important. That's
indeed.
important. Now, before we head into a conversation on Black Utopia, let's take a moment to thank each and every one of our listeners. Thank you for your support, for your encouragement, for your feedback, for your comments. We are so grateful.
Indeed, we are. A tsunami of thanks that I offer every time, and special thanks and shout out to our creative producers, Kyla Wright and Cavante Small.
All right, big ups to our producers. Awesome. Now, Irene, imagine a world where the impossible becomes possible. Imagine a world where Black and brown people are not burdened with an institution woven with racist fabric. From Zamunda to Wakanda, Black creatives have been imagining and creating spaces where the white gaze does not exist, where racism does not exist, and where notions of white supremacy were never a thing. These visions of Black agency and Afrofuturistic embodiment are more important now than ever before. Now, what do you think about these expressions of Black utopia?
You know what? I agree with you wholeheartedly. Let me tell you why I'm so excited that we explore this concept very much. Last month, which broke my heart, Stevie Wonder told Oprah Winfrey that he is leaving the United States and he is going to Ghana. And I said, oh my God. And the reason why he's going to Ghana is because he said he did not want his children anymore, his grandchildren and his great-grandchildren wake up in a world that doesn't welcome him. And so I said to myself, oh my goodness, what are we going to do if everyone, makes an exodus, to Ghana? But it made me think of W.E.B. Du Bois, who in 1959 left the United States and actually died on the day in 1963 on the March on Washington. But the wonderful thing that I like about this topic is, as you say, that we can speculate a future beyond white supremacy. It offers really a powerful vision, ways of radical justice and freedom. But it also does this. We can think of a Black citizenry that is not tethered to anti-colonialism, but rather it's, Pan-Africanist, and it's also Afrofuturistic. But I have to tell you, Stevie says this at the same time that Coming to America 2 was coming out. And I had to see it. But then it made me think about Zamunda and Wakanda in two ways. There was this pivotal moment that made me think about Black Utopia. Pivotal moment when, and I won't give out anything or be a spoiler here, but there's a point where Eddie Murphy has to go back to America, and Arsenio Hall says, "Hell no," and we laugh, but it's real because those segments in Coming to America 2, as well as in Black Panther, Black people are seen in real time, which is disenfranchised, dislocated. So I just said, well, let's think about what a Black utopia would look like in real time, because my introduction to it is in sci-fi. Octavia Butler, Martin Delaney, and other sci-fi Black authors that we didn't have. We've had Black townships, but always under what you would say, the white gaze. We've had Black Mecca cities like Chicago and Hotlanta, and we realize what's happening in Atlanta now. DC, okay? Chocolate City. So the thing is that, and then we had this great migration. Isabella Wilkinson talks about the warmth of other suns. So we went up north, but we realized that the promised land didn't promise us anything. So now I'm beginning to see a shift. And Stevie Wonder, has helped me to think about it in this way, along with the recent Coming to America too, that we are moving from this notion of the promised land to a Black utopia. And I was just really excited about it. But the audience need to know this, Emmett. You are dressed for the occasion. I think you're going to leave us as soon as we finish this podcast, because I got to tell the audience, our boy Emmett is in a beautiful dashiki, and he looks like a chieftain.
Well,
You look beautiful.
look, I am sick and tired of being sick and tired around all this racism and all this white supremacy. So I need to get on this notion of Black Utopia. So I wanted to dress for the cause. You raised a lot of good points, because I remember what I call old school television. You remember Fantasy Island?
Oh yeah! Oh my God!
And these folks would get on this plane and come to an island where their fantasies would come true.
Yeah.
And it was always this case that they were very rarely any Black folks who were ever on there. And
Yeah.
so, that was from 1977 and 1984. And then 1978, which is my favorite movie, and don't you ask me about it, but The Wiz, where
Oh
we
my
actually
God!
see, Black Utopia.
I guess we do. Oh my God. As a matter of fact, it replayed just last night. Absolutely. Follow the yellow brick road.
That's right.
Absolutely.
So
That is symbolizing that there is a path to a Black utopia.
Yeah.
Absolutely here. But the point is that it bothers me that we have to fantasize that, because there have been really, I mean, when we think of Black expatriates like James Baldwin, Richard Wright, Josephine Baker, we once thought France was that place here.
Yeah.
Listen, we've even had Black utopias in real Tulsa. Come on, that now we think of it as a massacre. Listen, this is before your time. Soul City, North Carolina.
North Carolina, yeah.
Okay, absolutely. The brother there, I mean, his name was Floyd McKissick, and he was a former Corps member, and he was a proponent of Black capitalism, and he said that was Black power. And he had sort of portioned out 500 acres of farmland, in this area. And the interesting thing about it would have been a dream city. But this is what happened. He had to borrow, as we say back then, he had to borrow from the man. HUD didn't come through. Then the little bit of money that he gave, not only was it not enough, he couldn't pay bills in time. And then they came up with these Trump charges of embezzlement, so he got tied up in litigation. So it said to me that maybe there really isn't a place here on the U.S. soil, because where we can have this utopia, because even Garvey back in the day, nemesis of W.E.D. Du Bois, said he was saying back to Africa before W.E. Du Bois said it. So it says to me, if we lose Stevie, come on now, who else is going to go?
Well, I mean, when you bring up Marcus Mosiah Garvey, the UNIA, United Negro Improvement Association, and the fact that he was claiming that we need to reclaim and recover, our ancestral homelands. And you're right, Du Bois was not trying to have it. Booker T. Washington definitely was not trying to have it. And so we have this situation where we're almost like, we're homeless, right? I'm thinking of the spiritual, sometimes I feel like a motherless child a long way from home. And the irony, though, is that we've been so creative, because the concept of Wakanda comes from 1966, when Stan Lee introduces the space in the Fantastic Four comic book, actually issue number 52, right? And we get Wakanda, but the Black genius of taking that concept and expanding it, utilizing the historical narrative of Mansa Musa.
That's right.
And some of the great African, right? And
philosophers. Wait a minute. African philosophers. But I think this is what gets me. And you're so right if we look at Garvey and Du Bois, because again, they were nemesis and they were the 1920s here. The very interesting thing is that Garvey was saying this: we can't build anything on this soil and it be ours, because W.E.D. Du Bois is associated with the NAACP. And he was saying, oh no, that's that it will never be Afrocentric. And in many ways, I love it. We love what the NAACP has done around civil rights, but he's absolutely right. And then the thing that gets me, though, is that we got to recognize this, though. We've had kind of utopias. I mean, folks who go to HBCUs, I know kids who come up here, who are from up south here, Cambridge, all right, who see nothing but a sea of whiteness, unbearable whiteness, and go down to one of those HBCUs and say, I never knew this was possible. Okay. I mean, so yes, we've had it. I mean, and we listen, Come on now, we got to give it. The black, as much as I
Yeah.
critique it,
Yeah.
that's the black church is a
Yeah.
black utopia. This is why we're in it from day, from morning, noon, and night. Because once you left that space, that utopic space, we had to deal with the hellish realities of every day come Monday.
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, let's give a big shout out to one of our super producers, Kyla Wright, who's a Hamptonian. All
That's
right,
right.
give it up to the
And my
HBCUs
spouse, and
and
my spouse.
Dr. Thea James, who's a
That's right.
Hamptonian. Let's give it up for them. You know,
I'm
what do you
jealous.
think? What do you think about Harlem during the Negro Renaissance? With, many people call it the Harlem Renaissance, but we know that the Renaissance moved like a zeitgeist. It moved from Harlem to Chicago to Detroit to Philadelphia to DC.
That's right.
But what do you think about Harlem during the 1920s? Would that be a black utopia as well?
It was and it wasn't. It was a black utopia in terms of we aggregated there, and you see black genius in terms of not only Harlem Renaissance, but in various ways, and entrepreneurial, the centrality of the black church. But if you look at the Harlem Renaissance very closely, again, many of the writers had to write in relationship to their white patrons.
Yeah.
And so again, you open up about the white gaze. You're talking about something that is unfeathered, from the white gaze. So as much as we like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston and Countee Cullen, and we can go on and on and on, all of them were controlled by a white mistress or master here. Mm-hmm. But when you're talking about Wakanda and Zamunda, and you're talking about absolutely black agency, and you're right. How can we imagine a world unfeathered, not yoked to white supremacy?
Mm-hmm. I mean, when I think about the Negro Renaissance in Harlem and the whole mantra of Black is beautiful, and these creative geniuses who were attempting to shift, they were attempting to shift the gaze from whiteness as the baseline and as the kind of sense of validity to a place where they could tell their own narrative. I think about, Duke Ellington, who for many years was attempting to tell the narrative of the African to African American diaspora through music. And the critics were slamming him and attempting to, just slander him, and so many others, even Count Basie and so many other great, figures there. But you're right about these, how should we call them? The baronesses and the mistresses who were the who were the financiers, right? Yeah. The financiers. I think about Monk and his baroness and whatnot.
Want to see what they want to imagine blackness that is palpable to them. Yeah. This is why I said I'm done with Black History Month, because it is produced for white consumption, and that's what the Harlem Renaissance was. Again, having to prove that they weren't natives, that they were human beings and could think. It reminds me of Phyllis Wheatley, who was a slave up here, who had to prove that she had the intellectual chops to write poetry. She becomes what I call exotic or exotica. Yeah. And so I want something, again, getting back to your notion, not the white gaze here, but we got to realize here, a lot of people are thinking, where do we go now? Because where do we go? The Capitol siege on January 6th was really another inflection point that we're not safe here anywhere in America.
I mean, let's look at this, because I don't want to. Oh, maybe I do. I mean, because they know that they know that Reverend Irene Monroe will say just about anything. So let me not do this, but let me say I'm not sure the war should be on Black History Month. I think that Black folks should reclaim Black History Month. And let me state my case. Okay. So back 1920s, around 1921, Carter G. Woodson decides that there should be Negro History Week, right? And he makes the mistake that many Black folks have made, thinking that Abraham Lincoln was the great liberator, right? Ooh, that's what we thought back then. And so he couched the holiday based on the week that had Abraham Lincoln's birthday and Frederick Douglass' birthday. And then in 1976, we moved from Negro History Week to Black History Month. And so it's anchored based on Abraham Lincoln. We don't think the way that we used to think about Abraham Lincoln. We can read his own writing and see that he didn't care.
But why a month, Emmett? We make history when we compartmentalize it, we continue to otherize it. And the point is that there is no American history without Black people's agency and history
agree with
in it. And the point is this: we will continue not to learn Black history as long as we're going to see 12 Years a Slave in a movie theater and not in a classroom.
I agree with all of that.
I'm done.
I agree with all of that, but can't we take agency of it and use it for our own good? I mean, come on. I can make the same claim about, you know, Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. birthday.
Oh
now,
no!
Come on now.
Okay,
everyone calling it a day of service,
but
right?
Listen,
so I want to honor the person, but the way I got to honor is I got to go work. I got to go work on the day.
I do call Black History Month High Black Employment Month. I will take the money. See, this is my thing. This is my thing, Emmett. If you're gonna be a token, you ought to take it for a good ride.
Lord.
Okay.
I'm not even gonna mess with you right now. We need a break. We need a break. We will be right back. This is the All Rev'd Up podcast. We'll be right back.
Prepare the royal jet. We are going back to America.
Oh, hell no, Your Majesty.
We're back. You just heard Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall in this very, very, very funny and absolutely imaginative movie, Coming to America 2, that is just launched here in 2021. And it's interesting because we find that in Coming to America's Zamunda and in the Black Panther's Wakanda, there is so much Black uplift. There is so much Black responsibility. There is so much of the things that just really debunk all of the negative stereotypes about Black folks. Irene, what are you seeing here?
You know, I love that scene. Every time I see it, I just fall out laughing because, yeah, hell no. But what I also love about it is that, you know, Eddie Murphy, you know, is a responsible dad, recognizing that his son cannot thrive here. His wife is from America, you know, and so what he does is he takes him back. But for those of us who don't have that option, don't have a Wakanda, Zamunda to go to, we, with our creative genius, have come up with the Black theological concept of a Black utopia with the concept of heaven. And it's sort of the heavenization, you know, of earth. Because it upholds democratic ideals, the notion of a participatory government, a multicultural democracy. Help me, Emmett. But I mean, heaven is like when I was in church as a little girl, and when I talk about, you know, a democratic idea, all God's children's got shoes. Okay, you got a shoe, I got a shoe, you got a robe. I mean, it's that, and it's that has really changed and shaped our, you know, not only liberation theology, but our civil rights movement. And believe it or not, our Black Lives Matter movement, because we have to hold on to that. That's a kind of cultural mechanism of hope, the sort of heavenization of earth.
Yeah. I mean, I think you are onto something extremely profound, that here on earth, when we don't have shoes, in heaven, we got shoes. Here on earth, when we don't have a robe, in heaven, we got a robe. And here on earth, when we can't speak about some of the social justice issues in ways where we can leverage our voices on social platforms, in heaven, we can kind of do this. Right, I got shoes, you got shoes, all of God's children got
some shoes.
Right?
That's right.
When we get to heaven, we're gonna walk around heaven, right? And then remember the refrain: heaven, heaven. Everybody talking about heaven ain't going there. heaven, right? So heaven becomes a space that for Black folks across the generations, we know that God loves us, and we know that the invitation from God has nothing to do with whiteness or white intermediaries or white manipulation. That our relationship with God has anchored us in a way where we can suffer all kinds of foolishness and chaos here. But when we get to heaven, we're going to sing and shout. We're going to turn about. Oh, come on. You got to be happy.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, I'm about to shout. It's a prophetic imagination here. And what we do is this here. We not only in real time talk about heaven, but we prepare you for it, not only in church, but even in your home going, you know, because the whole idea, the theology of an afterlife, okay, because we have, it's twofold. We have a heaven on earth for Black folks, and then an afterlife. Okay, so the journey is always one of Black agency. And I love it. I have to tell you something sacrilegious. when I was in seminary, my dog was named Heaven. I had a dog named Heaven. I had named her Heaven before I got to seminary. And then I passed this Black Presbyterian church, and people would say, Heaven? Who would name their dog Heaven? And I said, this is the only way that I can walk heaven on earth. Now I have to tell you, she was hell on 4 legs, but that was the only way.
But that is so you, though. That is so to even think about the construct of what that means and to be able to articulate it that way. Our musicians have been doing this so forever. I mean, Duke Ellington had a song named Heaven, right? That was part of a interesting group of songs that he was creating to help people understand about the transcendental experience, about, embodiment and agency. Sun Ra and the orchestra, right? He was always creating cosmic music, right? And then our big brother George Clinton and the, Funkadelic, the Parliament.
That's right.
Parliament All-Stars and the Mothership Connection. Right?
Oh my God.
It's not even just a Christian thing.
Right.
It becomes a Black thing because we need something transcendental and in many ways existential that we can hold on and cling on to, because the chaos and calamity of this current life is more than we can bear if we didn't have something else.
It becomes a cultural metaphor in the same way that the Exodus narrative is, that we will always hear various permutations of it. And so we hear various permutations and concepts, and now futuristic concepts of heaven. And what I like about our notion of heaven, it's not the heaven in Revelations that says only 1,044 people. Okay, Christians will get there, right? Because, but I want to say something about that, because that too reinscribes a notion of elitism, of otherism, insiders and outsiders. And so that's why our concept of heaven, and it's very interesting because again, this is us, using a canon within a canon, choosing those passages in the Bible that speaks about egalitarianism. So while heaven certainly allows us to enter, it also allows everyone else to enter. And so that's the stuff that I like, the way in which we have been a people, and it's about marginalized people are more likely to uphold a democratic ideal than the very people and founding fathers who wrote the Constitution, who, by the way, wrote slavery in the Constitution with the 3/5 compromise. That's why we have the 13th Amendment to abandon slavery. Because people always say, well, the wording is not there, but it is there by virtue of the 3/5, compromise, that we were 3/5 human or be counted as 3/5.
Well, really, only the men, right?
Only the men. What you?
Right. I mean, just to make it even worse, right?
Okay, right, and not the children either, right? That's right.
I mean, so there's so much corrective thinking and correction that needs to be made that we as Black folks, I'm just so proud of us. I'm just so proud to be Black that even in the sense of misery, we have figured out a way out of no way, that even in the midst of all kinds of controversy and turmoil, that we have figured out how to keep each other sound, how to keep each other sane, and in many ways, how to keep each other safe.
Oh, yeah. Oh, absolutely here. And so what I like about the whole idea, so when I was thinking about, Stevie leaving us, which I'm still said he's an icon here, that in many ways it is, because he's written about, he's sung about, he has songs about heaven, lyrics about it. I feel like, okay, there's a point that even with your imagination and all the agency, because we have MLK holiday because of him, that he realizes that it's with all the work that he's done, he can't have a parcel of heaven here, and that he has to go to the motherland. I have to say that when we were celebrating the 400th anniversary of the 1619 arrival of us to these shores, Ghana, if you remember, we were going to go. Thea and I, we were going to go in 2020. We were going to go in 2020 because it says welcome home. So it's that. It's like it's an ideal Africa. But I do wonder about this here. As much as Stevie's going to Ghana and W.E. Du Bois did they really find their heaven? Another person that has left the country is Randall Robinson. He went to the Caribbean islands. And what happened was the coup in Haiti with the U.S. See, this is during Clinton's administration, removing Aristide from office. But my point is that, you know, I hope that we never have any literature about whether W.E.B. Du Bois was actually happy in Ghana, or was that a way station for him? So that's the one wonderful thing that I've always thought about. And I say that because Stevie will do his work to find out, will that be the ideal place for him?
Well, I think there's many ways to look at this. And one of the ways that I tend to look at it is those folks who left, they were overwhelmingly frustrated and extremely exhausted from fighting, right? And in many ways, it's not that they gave up, it's that they chose to care for themselves in a season of their lives when they have given so much and have done so much for other folks, including the nation, right? Mm-hmm. Not just Black folks, but including the nation, and the nation does not love them back.
Right.
And the hurt and the pain of that creates so much resentment that I understand it. So, you know, I don't know.
But we do come back though, Emmett. Yeah. I mean, because when I think about, you know, Richard Wright and James Baldwin, you know, James came back to be part of the civil rights movement. And I'm sure by the time he died in the 90s, he was absolutely frustrated. Josephine Baker just gave up, but Nina Simone came back.
Yeah, she came back.
I mean, so there's something, I need to say this here, you know, you're right about us feeling homeless. And, you know, me being a foster child, I understand you move from place to place and you don't have a permanent home. Although Brooklyn is my home, I lived in many homes as a foster kid. But one of the things that I learned about home that I think that we do as Black people is that we carry nuggets of that, you know, of that with us. So that when I was moving from home to home, there were certain things that I had that were reminders of this lamp is home. You know, this picture is home. So there's a thing where we've learned to carry home with us as a people, you know, of the African diaspora. We've learned to carry home with us.
Well, I think one of the things that we ought to do, and this is between me and you and our listeners, let's let Stevie Wonder get some time to relax and be at peace. And then let's write him and beg him to get his butt back here because we need him. Let's invite him back, but let's give him some time to relax.
But we got to have something to show him.
Well, yeah, I think so. I think so.
His music might be even better.
I'm certain of that. Certain of that. But we're gonna figure out what we need to show him. But let's listen to you now, because I think that you have a closing word, a benediction, as it were, for us on this episode.
Oh, thank you, absolutely. Here. So, you know, as you know, our listeners, by the time you hear this, you will have heard about the incident that happened in Atlanta. So this is a benediction to really stop AAPI racism. So our hearts, prayers, love, and condolences go out to our Asian American and Pacific Island community of Atlanta and across the nation due to the recent act of violence against them. We stand fervently and unwaveringly in solidarity with our Asian American and Pacific Island brothers and sisters in combating anti-Asian racism. Martin Luther King said, whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be. This, folks, is the interrelated structure of reality. While division abounds among us, may we be bold and courageous enough to chart a better future for ourselves and our nation. It's not enough to just look outside of ourselves to see the places where society is broken. It's not enough to talk about institutions and workplaces that fracture and separate people based on race, religion, gender, and sexual orientation. We must also look at ways that we ourselves manifest these bigotries and how we are the very ones who uphold and are part of these institutions, workplaces, communities, and churches we speak ill of. We cannot heal the world if we do not heal ourselves of our fears, indifference, and intolerance of others. We must mend not only the sin-sick world we live in, but also we must mend the sin-sick world that we carry around within ourselves. May we live by compassion, value diversity, promote understanding, and advocate peace. Let us go forth now and do that which calls us to make our nation, this world, and ourselves more loving, more compassionate, and yes, more united. Ashe.
Ashe.
And amen.
Amen. All Rev'd Up is brought to you by us, the Revs. Our amazing producers are Kyla Wright and Cavante Smalls.
Music from this episode is from Reverend Price's son, musical prodigy, Emmett G. Price IV. All Rev'd Up is distributed by GBH.
Additional thanks to Bob Kempf, Elizabeth O'Brien, May Heath, Chelsea Mers, Meredith Neerman, and Zach Waldman.
If you like what you hear, let us know. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts and follow us at All Rev'd Up Pod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube.
And feel free to send us a note, a question, or a comment at allrev'duppod@gmail.com. We'll be back in 2 weeks for another episode of All Rev'd Up.